what we're doing is trying to introduce people to creation vacations, why they're important, and some ideas of what they can do on a creation vacation. And we'll be getting your feedback along the ways. Brian has led some creation vacations, and Joe has participated, and Charlie has participated. So we're still waiting for you, Hillary. Someplace. So anyway, we're glad to be with you today, and we're gonna, even though most of you have heard our story, we're just going to go ahead and start where we would, and so we will be asking for your feedback later on. Anyway, our journey began, well, actually it didn't begin there. Our journey began in the mind of God, right? And we all, or both of us, grew up believing in evolution. I came out of a Christian home and I believed in creation. I was taught the Bible was true. Why don't you just go back? There you go, Dave. Yeah, I was taught the Bible was true and I believed it. I believed in creation. I believed in Jesus as my savior. And yet going to school, I was taught evolution. So I ended up believing in evolution. And I didn't know what to do with it. In high school, I just draw a big line down the middle. And on one side, I put creation. On the other side, I put evolution. I thought that evolution was the scientific explanation and that creation was a religious explanation. And never did they meet. I had these boxes in my brain, you might say. Was not an integrated person at that point in time. In fact, my church friends were all different than my school friends. And it was like I was living two separate lives at that point in time. Well, I went from that situation in high school to a college, church college. I thought it was a Bible college, really. I don't know what to call it, but all I got at that church college was evolution. They told me Genesis was a myth that was written for primitive people who couldn't understand the science of evolution. They said those days in Genesis were periods of time, millions of years long. And somehow God must have used the process of evolution in creating. And I thought, well, that's a good solution. Now the wall can come down. I can have my evolution. I can have my creation. I can put them together. God must have used evolution, I thought. That idea is called theistic evolution, by the way, that God is somehow involved in the evolutionary process. At that point in time, that satisfied me. I still could have my faith. And after I met Dave, actually, just one step back, I went from that position of believing in theistic evolution, going to a so-called Christian college, to a public university. And of course, in the public university, all you get is evolution. And so I thought, I graduated thinking evolution was a proven scientific fact. We went on. We taught high school and later on college level, and I was teaching biology. Dave was in geology and math. And, we were growing in the Lord, which was really neat. Dave had become a Christian just a few months before I met him. And we started really growing in the Lord, but we didn't ever deal back with this Genesis issue. Nobody ever presented us anything at that point in time. But one day, God likes to mess with us a bit. And I was shopping at a little secondhand store and I found a book for 5 cents. It was called Evolution, The Fossils Say No by Dr. Duane Gish. And I bought that book. Dave says, good thing you bought it. It was only 5 cents. Because if it was 10, I might not have bought it because we were on a really tight budget back then. But I bought that book, I brought it home, I read it, and I went, whoa, wait a minute. I thought the fossils were the best evidence of evolution. They're the only real hard, cold facts that we have, aren't they? But I read the book, and in the book, Dr. Gish was sharing information why evolution couldn't work and that the fossils were really an embarrassment to evolution, not a proof of evolution. Well, I gave that book to Dave because he had a better background in geology and paleontology, studying fossils than I did. And he read that book. And at the end of that time, we said, wow, either this guy knows something we don't know, or he's just absolutely crazy. But go back a couple, Dave. But we decided to do some more research. And so the more we studied, the more we became convinced that evolution didn't work scientifically. Now, we didn't go back to the Bible yet at that point to really understand the implications of it. But because we were growing in the Lord, we thought, this is really cool. There's scientific evidence that just affirms the truth of Genesis. So we were really excited. We started learning everything we could about fossils and other things. And as we learned, we became very convinced the fossil record fits a whole lot better with creation and the fall and the flood than it does with an evolution model. And so Dr. Gish later wrote a book called Evolution, the Fossils Still Say No. At that same time, we had a student. His name was Jeff. And Jeff grew up in a Christian home. He was a wonderful kid. Dave and he went out fishing, hiking. Here he is with a couple of huge crabs he picked up along the beach. And we had a good time with him. He actually lived with us for a while. But one day Jeff says, Dave, I just can't buy this Jesus stuff. And Dave said, why not, Jeff? He says, because evolution is a fact, and that means Genesis is false. And Jeff said, if God can't get the first book of the Bible right, why would I trust anything else he has to say? It's a pretty good point, isn't it? I mean, if you know the author's lying in the beginning, why would you look at anything else? Why would you read the rest of the book, even if he's lying to you in the beginning? And so Jeff had some good points to make. Well, we had Dr. Henry Morris from the Institute for Creation Research come up to our little college up there in Alaska where we were teaching. And he did a series of presentations. And at the end of that time, Jeff said to us, you know, if evolution isn't true, that doesn't leave much, does it? He said, I better start doing some thinking. And in just 2 or 3 months after that, Jeff gave his life to Jesus, became a Christian, a follower of Jesus. And that was the point at which we started to see the spiritual implications of this whole issue. And we've been growing in that and seeing more and more every year, it seems like. But Jeff, as he understood that he could believe in creation and the fall and the flood, he began to understand that he was a sinner also. He needed a savior. Because in Genesis chapter 3, we learn about what happened to God's good earth that he created. Well, we see this all the time. We are in a battle in this world, in this world that we live in. Students are being bombarded with this idea that evolution is science, but creation is just a religious myth, we're told so often. We find, though, that when students are presented with some good, sound, solid evidences for creation, oftentimes it makes a huge difference. People will say, well, why are you doing this? Why do you teach creation? Why do you care so much about the beginnings of things? And I like to say, you know, the foundation, the origin of anything will help you to understand the meaning of that thing. People will often tell us, well, yeah, but it's not a salvation issue. I mean, we don't have to fill out a test when we get to the pearly gates and say, you know, did the fossils prove evolution? Give me 10 different evidences of evolution. Obviously, we're not going to have to do anything like that. But for Jeff, was it a salvation issue? It was certainly a stumbling block. Evolution was a huge stumbling block that was keeping him from being even open to hear what the Bible had to say. So yes, in a way, it was a salvation issue. Now we know we're saved by our trust in Jesus as our Savior, our Messiah, and that he died and rose again to pay for our sins. But evolution itself becomes a major stumbling block for many students. And not only that, it is one of the most important reasons why students give for rejecting creation. And so it undermines the faith of a lot of Christian students. At that point, as we began to understand that, as we embraced this call that God had, we believed to call on our life to go and teach creation ministry. And you really can't do a traveling creation ministry off an island in Alaska very easily. And so at that point, we moved back to Colorado and we prepared to do creation ministry. Later on, we went out to the school, the Institute for Creation Research, had a graduate school at that point. There we are back in 1982 with our little kiddos. And they're both grown. I don't know how they got to be older, but we're not any older, are we?
No.
The time at the ICR graduate student school was just, it was life-changing for us. And we were discipled, we were equipped for a creation ministry. In 1984, we started our own creation ministry, Alpha Omega Institute. That was the first sign somebody made for us. And I like to think of, yes, we claim the rainbow. It's a sign of God's covenant with us and with the earth. And so we haven't given up on the rainbow, even though it's maybe being a little misinterpreted these days. So we established Alpha Omega Institute in 1984. We got in our orange pumpkin van and we started traveling across this country, bugging our friends, bugging our relatives. Can we speak? Please let us come and speak in your church. And that's the way that this ministry started. Those early days were, yeah, some days it was like one night in one church and the next night in another one, and do it all over again, these one night things. But it was foundational for us. It was very powerful for us, and we began to see how this creation ministry could impact people's lives. Today, Alpha Omega's been we and our staff have been in over 30 countries bringing a creation message, and we really enjoy doing that. We also enjoy, we're learning this Zoom stuff now, so seeing if we can learn better how to do things online. Dave's going to talk to you a little bit about fossils, because that was one of the first things that we studied was fossils. What's the evidence? Do the fossils really prove evolution like we were told, or how do they fit with creation flood model? Go ahead, Dave.
All right. Well, one of the first things we started doing is realize that a lot of the young kids are being daily indoctrinated into evolution. And a good share of it is by pictures they are seeing in their textbooks, or if they go to a museum, the family might go on a vacation, go to a national park, go to a bunch of museums. Virtually all of those places are going to be teaching evolution, and no matter where they go. So one of the things that we started seeing as we research this is that they tell you frequently, like this particular redrawn section from a textbook, they tell you how a salamander might turn into a mouse or something like that. But we show that's great artwork. Is that the evidence? When you actually look for the evidence, you find none whatsoever. All you find are the salamanders back there, you find the mice, but you don't find anything in between, or what are called the transitional forms. And so we started realizing that if we would gear our presentations to about fifth grade audiences, then these young kids who are getting bombed by evolution could understand and say, whoa, that's not enough evidence, and won't get easily sucked into the idea of evolution. And so we had all kinds of examples we used. Some of you have seen those. Like, for instance, the artwork shows how the lobefin fish crawls out of the ocean and becomes the amphibians, and then later to become you. And that sounds like great artwork. You say, what's the evidence? Well, they say missing links show how this process of evolution took place. But I always like to ask the kids, hey, how can something missing show anything? And they usually laugh at that and say, yeah, well, watch out what textbooks say, because that's what the textbook claims right here that it's supposed to show. But there was nothing found at the time that book was written between the fish and the amphibians. And so how can nothing show anything? Well, lately they've been actually saying, oh, we have one now. Here it is. It's called Tiktaalik. And actually, this was used by Bill Nye the Science Guy against Ken Ham in one of the debates that was aired on television. And big debate. And Bill Nye pulled out Tiktaalik, which was a recent find at that time, and said, this is it. We have the missing link. But it turns out every one of the fish to amphibian supposed transitions totally blew out of the water. They're not good anymore. Okay. And that includes Tiktaalik, even the latest one. And now, like what they said, we thought we had the origin of the limb tetrapods pinned down. But now we have to rethink the whole thing. So basically, what they did is they found an older rock layer in Poland with four-legged creatures walking back and forth on. So therefore, four-legged creatures were already present, and supposedly this guy who came later was going to evolve eventually into four-legged creatures. So Tiktaalik can't be the missing link because they're already there. Anyhow, so I love looking at the artwork. There is frequently great artwork, and Joe, you're an artist. You know, you can draw a picture and convince most kids of something just by a picture, right? And that's the difficulty. You see the from NOAA here in the .gov, you find basically how a whale evolved from a land animal like a dog, all right, or something like that. And they show you that, but that's great artwork. What's the evidence? Let's look at a couple of pieces here. First of all, they say this dog-like creature is going to turn into that particular whale. Well, a lot of differences. It's going to have to be a lot of changes, I would think. But the problem is you go to the museum and they find out what they show you what they found. And actually they show you artwork. And they say, this is the guy that turned into whales. Oh, that's the guy that turned into whales, huh? What's the evidence for it? Well, it turns out that all they had for that were two small pieces of a jaw patched together with white matrix. When I asked the students, and we went around the country telling people this, what is that enough evidence to get that great artwork? And usually, especially the smaller kids, they would holler out all in unison, no, no. And so that's good to hear them say that. Then we show them Pakicetus, and they say, wow, this proves evolution. This is a land animal turning into a whale. Great artwork. What's the evidence? And then we show them what that evidence actually was. And it was only the skull that's in the bottom right. You see the dark spot in the skull, one bone at the back of the head, a couple of teeth, one small patch jaw. Well, guess what? That's all they had. And then I talk to the students and say, look what it says at the top of this page in your textbook. Bones prove whale walked. Wait a minute. This is all they found. They did not find legs. They did not find tails or backbone. So how can something without any legs prove anything walked? And the kids understand that. And for you who are listening here, what you can do is realize if you present this to your kids, your grandkids, they can understand that. And then they will be able to say, oh, I better start looking at those pictures more carefully. All right. And ask those questions, such as what's the evidence? And so, anyhow, now they have a new a view of Pakicetus. This is the 2004 model. I showed you the 1983 model. So which one is correct? Again, it's all good artwork, isn't it? So as you go down the line for this whale evolution, you come to another one called Ambulocetus. And you say, hey, great artwork. What's the evidence? You know what most kids would say? Right here. There is the evidence. You see it right here. There it is. They've got the skeleton. most kids, when they go to the museum, will see those skeletons. So if you want to take your kids on a creation vacation and you want to go to museums, you have to be a little bit prepared to let them know that what they're going to look at is not necessarily everything they found. Frequently, they have two different colors you can point out. And so you become armed with some of the stuff that's necessary for your kids if you want to do it. And the kids again will say, well, they show a whole skull. It's in the museum, it's in the textbooks, right? Problem is, they didn't find a whole skull. And they missed a bunch of the pieces of that particular guy. And here's all they found of Ambulocetus. They didn't find that whole skeleton. Oh my goodness, just these fragments. That's not enough evidence to get that great artwork, is it? And so they start seeing it. In fact, the skull has a lot of stuff absent, like all teeth except for possibly one root, period. The silver material that you see, or grayish material, is stuff that they never did find. But they added it. That's good artwork that they added that. But as you can see, they added an awful lot to the skull here, didn't they? Almost all the teeth. Here's a piece that's extremely important to prove that a whale walked, would be the blowhole here. The blowhole is missing entirely. And this video would actually show you that. And in fact, it was actually a video that was taken of the guy who actually found it and his co-workers, and they admitted that they didn't find a good share of that skeleton. But notice in the museum, when you actually look at the different colors, look at all this gray stuff. That's all stuff they didn't find. And so they had fragmentary evidence. I also like to show them pieces of human evolution and said, is that your ancestor? Her name is Lucy. That's your great, 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 great grandma. Turns out the kids need to be taught. What's the evidence? And it's kind of fun. We've been doing that for many years. We run into adults that have young kids right now, or even teenagers, or even kids that are already married. And they will come up to us and say, I remember that. You say, what's the evidence, don't you? And I love it. It's after 30 years, they're still remembering all that. And so great artwork. What's the evidence for Lucy? Well, there you see a museum exhibit and you see what they found. But the problem is they didn't tell you that the specific knee joint that they used to try to get information about Lucy was not found with the skeleton. It was found 2 to 3 miles away from the rest of the skeleton. But look at this artwork. Look at the gorgeous face for Lucy. Look at the hands. You see, you don't have a face for Lucy, do you? There's no face on that bone. In fact, most of the bones are missing. There are no hands. There are no feet. But you go to the Denver Museum, what do you see there? You see Lucy, hands, feet, skull, all that kind of good stuff, right? So remember, artwork is extremely important, isn't it? So make sure that you teach kids to ask that very important question. It turns out that the French Science Academy is saying that we should drop Lucy as one of our ancestors. They should be removed because of modern information, okay? I want to show that there is a huge bias from evolutionary perspective. And this clouds any evolutionist from even considering the creationist perspective. I like this. Is your bias showing here? And so they're talking about butterflies and birds and say, hey, we have a problem here. There's such disparate creation as bats, birds, and butterflies all have wings in common. But, they said, they had to evolve from somewhere. What are they assuming? Charlie, tell us.
Evolution.
Yeah, they're assuming evolution, right?
Right.
And now they're trying to figure out what they see based on evolution rather than saying, how do you get wings in all these different creatures, right? So there is a bias toward that evolution. Then they found the soft tissue in dinosaur bone. That was Mary Schweitzer. It was interesting. Mary Schweitzer was shocked when she found soft tissue in petrified dinosaur bone. And she said, how could this be? It looks impossible, but the data convinced her. She could actually put a forceps in there and wiggle some soft tissue. She actually saw red blood cells. She even saw fragments, what she thought was DNA as well. And so she ended up doing a whole bunch of research on this. And the big issue with that was this. How can you preserve soft tissue for millions of years? Soft tissue rots pretty quickly. And the proteins that make up some of the stuff degrade very quickly as well. And it'd be just a rotten mess, is what it would be. He said, but so what gives here? What gives? And so she was stymied by it, but she had to publish her information. And when she started publishing her information on soft tissue, she hit a roadblock. Now, keep in mind, Mary Schweitzer is not a creationist, okay? So the evolutionists are setting up a roadblock even for other people who believe in evolution. And so they wouldn't accept what she had to say. In fact, Mary Schweitzer said, I had one reviewer tell me that he didn't care what the data said. He knew what I was finding, soft tissue, in ancient millions of years, supposedly dinosaurs, wasn't possible. Wasn't possible. It would have degraded in a few hundreds of years or even tens of years, let alone millions and millions of years. He said, I wrote back and said, well, what data would convince you? And he said, none. Do you think this guy's bias is showing up? Most definitely. It really is. So Mary Schweitzer still is believing in evolution, still believing in antiquity of dinosaurs, etc. So she had to come up with an answer, and finally stumbled on the possibility of iron preserving some of that soft tissue. Aha, iron does it. Well, where do you get iron? Hemoglobin. Hemoglobin in the blood. Oh, that is iron rich, isn't it? And so she said hemoglobin would do it. She did a bunch of research on ostrich tissue. Why would she pick ostrich? Because of the common idea that dinosaurs evolve into birds. So let's take ostrich tissue and let's soak it in an iron-rich hemoglobin solution. And sure enough, she found one thing. The hemoglobin preserved that tissue for almost 2 years at least. And you can still recognize it. Well, that didn't say it wasn't any degradation, but at least it could still recognize it. And she said, aha, that can answer the problem. And so scientific journals all of a sudden picked up that idea and said, Mary Schweitzer found the solution to soft tissue in dinosaur. It was actually preserved in an iron-rich environment with a lot of hemoglobin. So, but there's some problems with that, okay? So there are problems. 2 years of preserving tissue, maybe thousands, but how do you extrapolate that to 180 million years? 180 million years. That's a huge stretch to do it. And besides that, iron is not present with many, many of the fossils that they find. So they can't do that. They've now found soft tissue in certain creatures that are supposedly 550 million evolutionary years old. And again, soft tissue, no iron present in that whatsoever. And besides, where do you get concentrated hemoglobin? It's got to be extremely concentrated in order for this to happen. We can get it from the lab, probably, but usually not in the natural environment. And the other problem is in her research, she had to keep that ostrich tissue totally dry. All right, now with the dinosaurs, you've got to bury it deeply and rapidly. And where are these dinosaur fossils usually found? It's what they call fluvial or river deposits. That doesn't sound like a nice dry environment to me. It's going to have groundwater all the time seeping through, and that's what's going to petrify the bone. And so she has some problems yet to explain. And also, it's not just a single little dinosaur fossil. They found now hundreds of different fossils that have soft tissue in them, dating all the way from dinosaurs of 100 and some million supposed evolutionary years to, like I said, 550 million years. Again, a major problem to try to explain how do you preserve soft tissue for millions of years speaks drastically against that. Okay, is your bias showing? Again, they use the definition of a dinosaur. People ask, are crocodiles dinosaurs? Not by definition. The definition of a dinosaur has a particular type of hip structure that puts the legs directly underneath. Crocodile has them out to the side. Oh, that's different. So therefore, a crocodile, even though the head might look like a T-Rex, all right, the crocodile can't be a dinosaur. Okay, so however, they say, birds have the same type of hip structure. Oh, birds do. Therefore, the big conclusion the evolutionists have come up with, all birds are dinosaurs. Did you catch that? All birds are dinosaurs. They will also say, but not all dinosaurs are birds, but all birds are dinosaurs. So the reasoning then continues from an evolutionary perspective. When you find feathers in supposed dinosaur layers of rock in the fossil record, that definitely proved that dinosaurs wore feathers. Well, if you found a feather and you say, oh, that's a bird feather, all birds are dinosaurs, so now you can say, dinosaurs, especially birds, bird types, wore feathers. You see the circular reasoning kind of in that as well. By the way, did you know they have found true birds in supposed dinosaur rock layers? Birds like sandpipers, loons, ducks, flamingos, cormorants, albatross, parrots, owls, all these things, again, found in dinosaur rock layers. That's a problem for evolution there, isn't it? Especially if dinosaurs, like the theropod type of dinosaurs, are going to evolve into birds. No, the birds are already there. They're there. Well, when they came up with the idea of dinosaurs and evolving into birds, all of a sudden National Geographic jumped in the scene here, and they showed a fossil and say, look at this. This fossil proves that birds evolved into dinosaurs. And they show a beautiful picture of a bird or a dinosaur-like creature fully feathered. All right. Wow, that looks good. And they show you what they figured out was the feathers. And you see this black carbonaceous material? That's a fuzz. That's not a feather. So they kind of extrapolated that and they assumed it's on its way to becoming feathers. In fact, in the text, they called it proto-feathers. The problem was that was a hoax. And was not only a hoax, it was somebody made money taking a couple of different fossils together, putting them together, making them look like a bird-like creature, And then they came and sold it to a museum and made a lot of good money, evidently. But later they found out this beautiful picture, the icon that National Geographic had for bird from dinosaur evolution, bit the dust. Here's the article: scientists dispute missing link fossil, and they were able to show that it was definitely a fraud. Anyhow, but National Geographic also had another article and following in that same sequence there, and they showed how a leg got more and more feathery until the creature took off and flew away. And so they show the path to birds. Well, Mark Sonmore, our artist at AOI, decided to take that apart and show the real order of these things. And by the way, something you have to know, that's all artwork, nothing but artwork. All these pictures of these things nicely clad with feathers, all good artwork. And but that's not what they found. But they're assuming evolution here. But the problem is they've found true birds where they're supposed to be flying around today on the top of the rock layers, but you dig down deep, 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 deep into the rock layers. Oh, there's true birds right there. Below those dinosaurs, below those theropods that are supposedly going to evolve into birds. And wait, look at this. Birds even before the dinosaurs supposedly showed up on the scene. Oh my. How do you handle that? How do you handle that? Anyhow, so this is the real order. And so that's a big problem for evolution, but not according to somebody who's really sold on evolution. Kevin Padian, University of California at Berkeley, said, no problem. We don't always get everything in the fossil record in perfect order. I say there is a big problem that needs to be addressed there. So my question is, so did dinosaurs evolve into birds? Nope. Thank you, Charlie. No, they did not. And in fact, no. PLOS One magazine was showing out theropod dinosaurs they found, but this particular skeleton had 3 birds in its stomach. They weren't evolving into birds. They were eating them. It shows that they were contemporary with dinosaurs, probably created right close by in days of creation. And so, all right. Think about it. Does evolution produce such amazing design features? Think about a dinosaur like this theropod here, and then evolving into a hummingbird. Well, that's what supposedly would have happened over millions of years, right? Charlie, did you get to see some wonderful hummingbirds in Costa Rica?
Lots and lots of them.
Lots of them. Yeah, you enjoyed that tour, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
but think about all that, those particular hummingbirds zipping around. We can't even design airplanes that good. And the slow and natural processes of evolution, mistakes, supposedly made all that good design. I see design when I see it. In fact, I see design when I look all over, all the way from the DNA in your cell to the hummingbirds. I see even design in dinosaurs. Okay. I see that great design. But somebody's bias is showing here. According to Scott Todd, he says, even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such an hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic. What do you mean naturalistic? That means only natural processes can produce it without a designer, without a God, etc. You can't, according to what Dr. Scott Todd testified in the Kansas school district court case. They said, you can't even mention it because it means there's a designer. If there's a designer, that means God. Oh, separation of church and state, we can't talk about God. Therefore, we can only talk about naturalistic processes. You like that? Naturalistic process, and that is all. Okay. That's why I keep saying evolution is a philosophy. It is not science, but it's posing as science. Okay. And it is very necessary for the idea of naturalism, that everything has to be explained by naturalistic processes. And so it doesn't work that way. So go ahead, Mary Jo. Unmute yourself.
I got too many screens. Yeah. Colossians 2:8. See to it no one takes you captive through, what is that word? Philosophy. Is science philosophy? Well, science in a very strict sense of the word, science should be based on evidence and what we actually see in this physical world. But there's a whole lot of philosophy involved in this idea of evolution. In fact, when Dave says something about that evolution is a philosophy, that's when the evolutionists get really upset with us.
Oh, do they ever?
I remember one time after a seminar out in Oregon, and a man came running up to the book table in the back, and he said, "Your husband just changed my life." And I went, "What happened? What did you say?" He said evolution is a philosophy. I didn't ever think of it that way. I always thought of it as a proven scientific fact. And it does make a difference, doesn't it? If you think that evolution is an idea, it's an idea about how things came into being. It's not pure science at all, is it? And there's so many scientific problems with it. So you can switch the slide, Dave.
Okay. Oh, I was going to mention that for that particular gentleman, he could not reconcile the biblical record with the evolutionary ideas. He couldn't. Therefore, even though he went to church, he was really, for 50 years or less, maybe, he was actually struggling with this. All his life, he said, "I've been struggling with it." And now he can realize he doesn't have to believe the evolutionary perspective.
Well, as we traveled around and as we started doing speaking and so on, we became, very convinced that we wanted to teach this to more people, and we wanted a little more time than we could have in an ordinary seminar. So we thought about, well, we could do conferences and bring people into a conference. But then we went, well, people are busy and they usually have a very limited amount of vacation time. And if it's just a conference, they're probably not going to come because they want to do something really fun with their family on a vacation. And, these family vacations are really meant for more than just sitting around listening to lectures. And so we said, we got to get people out into the creation. We want to bring them out someplace where they can really experience God's creation. And so back in 1986, we started doing the very first camps that AOI did at a camp called Red Cloud up in the mountains in Colorado. And then a few years later, we started at Twin Peaks, which is another camp that we're still using. I remember one time we had a man from Wisconsin come. His name was Charlie too, by the way. And he came and he brought his animals. He had raccoon and he had a porcupine and a variety of animals. And so he shared those animals and shared the characteristics of those animals with the people at camp. And it was a real powerful time. You see the kid with the marshmallow, that's our son, Steve. This is way back, I don't know, early on. And he was at that time a perfectionist with his marshmallow roasting even back then. Now he works with a ministry called Journey Quest, where he takes people out on wilderness trips, rafting and rock climbing and hiking and so on. He takes about a half an hour to 45 minutes around the campfire, teaching kids how to make the near perfect s'more. He says, I haven't never got it perfect yet, but I'm still working on it. So I got a kick out of that way back when he was already trying to do that. But we found over the years that these camps were so powerful, not only for teaching creation, but also for helping families to build good family memories. And, you know, people need that time. And so to build the family memories, sometimes people will come and we've had people come and they say, you saved our marriage at the camp. Well, we didn't do it, but they came and they were in that setting and they had time as a family and they had time learning about God and creation, really helped these families to come together. We've had other times at camp when we almost had two families at odds with each other, one of them over the discipline of their children and in different philosophies. We ended up doing a little bit of family counseling at that point. So you never know, but it's more than just looking at scientific evidence. These camps are meant to be a rounded experience where you can enjoy fun together, establish family ministries together, and also to just to really enjoy and be able to worship God as creator in a different setting than most of us do. And I mean, I'm very, very thankful for the Zoom technology now. It's allowed us to reach people we could never reach before. Oscar's with us here. He was part of a 12-week training course that we did for Costa Ricans who wanted to learn about creation. And we couldn't have done that 12 weeks in a row unless we had Zoom. I mean, it was a fantastic opportunity for us. However, where we really learn is on the trips, right, Oscar? The trips are really where we really come together, and we are able to not only to see and enjoy one another, enjoy the evidence, enjoy God's creation, but we make tremendous relationships with people that last a long, long time. Oscar had to step in and take over for us, didn't you, Oscar, on the latest trip?
Yeah, quite a challenge this year, but we made it. Well, there's Charlie and Arlene. They can witness to that. How it all came out good at the end.
We were so glad, Oscar, that you could step in for us. I don't know what we would have done otherwise. And so that's where the training comes in. That's why it's important. That's why we're also looking at multiplying the ministry that we have and looking at training more people. But anyway, these camps, as we look at them, the value in spending time in nature. Sometimes it's just being out there and witnessing the magnificent glory of what God has done. Go ahead.
I see Nate Loper there too. He also does a family ministry and for people wanting to go on raft trips and to the canyon, Grand Canyon. So glad you're joining us too, Nate.
Yeah, Nate, can you just share just a minute or two about what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I get to serve as the executive director for Canyon Ministries here in Arizona. And so we do, biblical creation tours of the Grand Canyon daily, every day except for Sunday. And then we also do these rafting trips through there. So we actually have Brian from your ministry there coming out, I believe, this summer and next month on our 7-day Christian leaders trip through the Grand Canyon. So a great opportunity.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I look forward to spending more time with Brian once again and really diving into learning more about what you guys do and sending folks up your way. So fantastic to see the legacy and the history and everything you guys have been doing up there. It's a fantastic place. My home state is Colorado, so that's where I was raised at. So everything you guys are doing up there is near and dear to my heart.
That's great, Nate. And actually, we have two couples from our church that are going to be with you starting, I don't know, the 18th, whatever that week is.
I love it.
Yeah, we are excited to have them come. So coming out of these camps and tours, what we have seen sometimes is some real testimonies coming out. You see the couple on the two bottom pictures there. They first came to camp many years ago. We'll probably see about telling you their story in another one of the sessions here. So we'll save that. Do you notice Dave and Don there? Look at how they're talking about how big their fish are.
Especially the ones that got away.
When you talk about your fish, you got to go like this, right? Now, they're real fishermen, and Don and his family came for many, many years to the creation camps, and it really impacted their family a whole lot. And then their daughter ended up going on staff at one of the camps that we use. So one of the things that I love about the camps that we touch on in seminars, but we really don't get is as much as we'd like, is the camps give us opportunity to really get to know people and share back and forth. And we learn so much from the people that come. And I know we've learned a lot from all of you in various places and as we've interacted together. So we're always wanting to learn more, better ways to present things, new ways to talk, as well as just getting to know people in their life and being able to pray together, worship together, have fun together. So camps and tours will do that. Now, we also want to, in this time though, we want to find out, you can maybe do you guys know how to share on here? If you want to, I'd like to get a couple of you to tell us about, as you were growing up as a kid, did you ever take a family vacation? And if so, what was your best vacation and what was good about it? And then if you have a vacation that was really bad, what happened there? So anybody want to share?
Yeah, Mary Jo,
Yeah,
I'll
Joe.
jump in there.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, so my family always took road trips during the summertime, and I think every year we went somewhere different. And we would go to down the smoke. We lived in Ohio. I grew up in Ohio, and we would go down to the Smoky Mountains. We would go. One year we went to New England, and Arcadia National Park, and Boston, and Plymouth, Plymouth and Cape Cod. And then, but the biggest, memory I have is we took a month and we went out to the West and to Colorado and the Grand Canyon. And I think we made it over to the Pacific Ocean at Long Beach, California. But we really spent a lot of time in Colorado and camped outside of Rocky Mountain National Park for 5 days, I think, and went down to Mesa Verde and the Grand Canyon, of course. And anyways, it was the summer before my sixth grade year, after my fifth grade year, and so I just have a lot of fond memories of that trip and just being able to see new places and get to explore. And it really impacted me being able to go on these summer trips to see new places. We usually went to national parks and be in God's creation. And I just have a lot of, fond memories of that.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks. Arlene, did you ever take trips as a kid with family?
So, when I was young, my dad bought a place on the lake, and that was basically, where we had our vacations every year. And anyway, he had a boat and we skied and anyway, got away from the city. But when I was going into my senior year, he bought a new car, 1967, and it had air conditioning, and he planned a really nice trip, kind of like what was it Joe was saying? We went to California, went to went to Chinatown. We went to the I'm forgetting the big trees in California, sequoias.
Redwoods,
Redwoods, sequoias, and then we went to the Grand Canyon. We saw the petrified forest. Anyway, he planned it really well, and it made me want to do really neat vacations with my kids and go explore the country when they were growing up because of the trip we did that year.
These trips are powerful, aren't they? And they really do create memories for children, and it broadens your world so much. I mean, we can look at a picture of the Grand Canyon, But when you stand on the edge of the Grand Canyon, I mean, it's like, wow, it's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I remember when we had one of our older grandsons on one of the South Rim tours. And when he stepped off the bus and walked over to the edge of the canyon and he looked at it and he turned around and he says, "Grandpa, that's not real."
It almost looks that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Remember one time we were doing a tour and some talks at the Grand Canyon, and fortunately they had given us a room. The group that was sponsoring it rented a room for a lecture on the rim. And it was that big room. You've probably seen it, Nate. That's got all the windows overlooking the canyon. Gorgeous, right? Well, it snowed overnight before that, and it was all totally socked in, and they could not see the canyon one little bit.
You didn't even know there was a canyon there.
Yeah, that's such a strange thing when that happens. It's like there's a giant hole, but you have no clue that it's there.
So we did the lecture, and right at the very end of the lecture, the clouds lifted, and we couldn't have planned it better. It looked like, whoa, there it is in all its glory.
That's awesome. God's showing off a little bit, huh?
Yes, he did.
Exactly. So, Nate, did you do a lot of travel or adventure or something in your early years?
Oh yeah. I mean, growing up in Colorado, we had stuff all over the place, but even before we lived there, one of the early memories I had, one of my favorite, vacation experiences, we did kind of all over Colorado, but one of the big things we did was the Great Sand Dunes National Park over there.
Yeah.
And so as a kid, I remember, I think probably 8 years old, that we went and we camped there for a couple nights, and the ranger programs, and, got to hike, on top of the big dunes there. It was fantastic. And so years later, when I was doing youth ministry, I took groups of students out there for camping trips. And then 2 years ago, got to take my own kids. And so we camped there at the sand dunes for, I think it's 2 nights we were there. So got to climb to the top of the hills again. And it was just, again, it's that legacy of passing on God's creation to future generations. And so that was a fantastic trip with my own 2 kids. We go kind of annual camping trips to various places. And so, we try to do that all the time. And those memories that I had as a child, I'm now able to pass on to my own kids. And so it's just exciting that God has given us so much creation around us that really testifies his glory and really instills that power in future generations of who God is. And I think the outdoors, is a great teaching classroom to do that in.
When you were a kid, Nate, I know as kids, we had a lot of fun on those vacations. We loved them, but we didn't really look at them in any perspective, in my family at least, of, oh, what a wonderful world God made. It was more, we were just experiencing things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, did anybody else, were you already in a family that would point out to you the glory of God's creation as a child? Or is that something you came into later?
I think for me, it was something that came in later, honestly, but I do remember, same vacation, we went up to Dinosaur National Park area. And so we're visiting up there. And of course, they've got the signs about the millions of years. And my dad was very good at saying, well, not exactly. And so he would, give us a biblical perspective.
Good.
And so that's instilled with me. But I think in many ways, doing creation and studying it has really given much more excitement to the landscape. I mean, growing up in Colorado, I grew up in Pagosa Springs in the mountains. And so when I was a kid, I didn't like going up to, Grand Junction area because I thought it was all kind of just desert and boring. But now studying geology, I'm fascinated by that landscape and by the history that's taken place and the fossils we find. And so I think when you can incorporate an excitement for God's word and the history of the flood and all these things, and then you see the landscape, to me now, I love going up in that area because those Badlands are just fantastic places to see and study things of God's word right in front of your own eyes.
That's right. Have you ever been on one of the AOI Colorado National Monument tours?
Not yet, but I'm hoping
Okay. Next time you're through this way.
so. Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Good. Yeah. Oscar, did you have any family vacations when you were a kid that you remember?
Well, as a kid, I didn't travel much, but I was in the countryside, and we moved around a lot. We did visit relatives around our place, and it was always fun, like going out with the family. I started to travel more when I grew up. Now, as an adult, I've been traveling around the country even more than before because actually I've been to places I haven't been before. Even my country, I didn't know there was so many things to see in my country. Sometimes you take things for granted when you're in your own country and you don't discover how beautiful your country is until you travel around. I started working with foreigners because of my career, my major, English, and I started to work with medical caravans at the beginning, and started in a few places. But then this big project, the AWA project, the Discover Creation project, it really made me go around the country and look for so many things I didn't even know, and looking for all the nature in my country. It has changed my perspective of my own country, and as a Christian, my perspective about creation. It's been a great experience. And traveling abroad is also a great experience. When you live in a country and you don't go abroad, you tend to, I don't know, like it just what I mean is going out, traveling abroad just changes your mind. It's like when you see Americans coming to my country, I see how they get like surprised about things that we take for granted. I don't know. Very small details, they get so surprised. So they just see things that sometimes we don't pay attention to, and small details. And we go like, why are they surprised about these little things? We always see that. Like it's so common here, like monkeys and all these birds and things like those. All these great things the country has to offer. But that's a great thing about traveling. You change your perspective, you see new things, you meet new people, a new language. The first time I went, for example, to the US, it was such a strange experience, seeing all this new system, all this development, and all the whole way people, their customs, and everything was just different, so different, and it just sometimes confuses you, and you sometimes can get in trouble because you don't know how to deal with the system. But it's challenging, and it's so nice to have all these experiences. Traveling is just changes your mind.
Yeah.
That's
And
true.
we've had a lot of adventures with you, Oscar.
Yeah.
That's been good.
That's been very good.
And teaching creation, going around the country to different places. I remember them introducing us in Mongolia one time, and they said, these people have come from the ends of the earth to speak to us, and we thought we were at the ends of the earth. But
Yeah,
what a
all
difference in those
perspective.
cultures. But still, what's so neat for us is to see the body of Christ in all those different countries that we've been in, and realize that we are united on that one thing, on the Lord Jesus Christ. That's
Yeah.
been such a blessing for us.
Hillary, are you still on? I think she had to get off to meet a repairman. So if you're there, you can share with us. Otherwise, we'll go on. I think we'll go on. Let's go on, Dave.
Okay, we will.
What's a DIY vacation? DIY.
Do it yourself.
Do it yourself. And most people do it yourself vacation, or a lot of people do, especially people that are on a very limited budget, and it may be that you pack up your car and you take a camping trip someplace near where you live, those are still powerful, powerful vacations. But they can involve a whole lot of work. I know Dave was planning a 2-week vacation for our 50th anniversary, and it took ages for him. He was online again and again and again, looking for hotels, looking for all the things Oscar does behind the scenes. You end up having to do for yourself. And he got this whole trip planned, and then COVID hit, and we had to cancel the whole thing. And praise God, we got most of our money back. But all that time he had spent preparing that, if you plan your own vacation, you got to do what? Hotel rooms, or campsites. You got reservations. You've got fees to pay everywhere you go, and on and on and on. And sometimes it takes an awful lot of upfront work. And I'm not saying don't do it yourself trip, but if you do, be prepared to know that it's going to take a little extra work for you to do it.
One of the things you need to know about, like for instance, Joe, if you want to go to Arches National Park, you better from April to sometime in October or at the end of October, you have to now have reservations with the national park. Otherwise, you show up there, I'm going to go to the Arches National Park, and you realize, they're only allowing a limited number of people in. And there you get turned away at the gate, and you just traveled 3,000 miles to get there.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean you won't run into glitches if you go on a planned vacation with others. That can still happen. You have to make some quick switches of your itinerary or whatever. And I remember one of the vacations, or the creation vacations that we sponsored in Yellowstone, and we were going to go around the South Loop. Well, there were a lot of fires in the area. But the day we were going to do it, the road was open. So we went down the South Loop. And Dave, I think you could stop sharing the screen for a bit if you want to.
Oh, okay, I can do that.
So anyway, here we are. We went down this South Loop. and as we were down there, we heard we were going to go all the way around, right? Well, there was a gasoline truck delivery, great big tanker that had tipped over on the other side of that loop. And so the road was closed there. So we couldn't do the whole loop. So we said, well, we'll just go back the way we came. Well, about that time we hear from the ranger, that road is now closed. So we couldn't go back that way. And we ended up having to drive another extra 2 hours and go down to Jackson, Wyoming, and go all the way around on a bumpy gravel road. But you know what? Everybody took it in stride. They had a great time anyway. And it seems like at least most people are a little more forgiving on these vacations, and especially when you've got a group of believers that is enjoying the Lord and enjoying one another. And it was all okay. And it was a memory we wouldn't have had otherwise, and of course you can't control the weather. So you had a lot of rain, sure, and Charlie, didn't you, on this last trip? But one of the trips,
the weather has been really different this year. Actually, now we should be getting a lot of rain, but we usually start to get rain starting May, but it's mid-June now, and it's just starting to rain. It's been so different. And then for the trip, we were expecting so much sun and clear days, but then we got all this rain. Fortunately, it was mostly in the afternoons or nights, so that was good because we had most of the tours were during the day.
yeah.
Some of them were really early, like when Oscar got us up at 5 a.m. to go look at the $1 million bird.
The quest for the Quetzal.
It was a good experience. I promise everyone it was going to be a good experience, and everyone was, at least the ones that decided to go, they were really, really satisfied when they came back. Huh?
The intrepid explorers, right? We had a 10-day trip one time on a backpacking trip in northern Minnesota in the Boundary Waters Wilderness area. This was a family vacation, do it yourself. 10 days of rain. 10 days of rain. I tell you what, we got so tired of trying to put up a tarp and boil water so we could drink it. We didn't have a filter back then. But you know what? It was fun. It was a good family memory anyway.
Yeah, and the kids remember it too, because Mary Jo always has a song for everything. And but anyhow, there they are in the rain. We're paddling down into the upper reaches of one lake, and Mary Jo is singing about what, Mary
Going
Jo?
down the river on a rainy afternoon.
The kids still remember that.
Yeah, they thought I was crazy. They were about 5 and 7, I think, on that vacation. Well, we're just about out of time. Anybody have anything they'd like to share before we call it good for today?
Let them know what we're going to be doing tomorrow there. Okay, Mary Jo?
Oh, all righty. Yeah, good. Tomorrow, if you want to, if you could share the link with some others, it'd be great. This is the first time we've done this particular formatting. So if you have comments that could help us, please be sure to do that. Tomorrow, we are going to look at some of the things about why creation vacations are important. And we'll be looking at some of the kinds of vacations you can take with your family, various places and so on. So you might be thinking tonight about vacation spots and where you think would be a good place for a creation vacation. And then also some ideas tonight. If you could just, for homework, you want homework? What do you like to do on a family vacation? What are some of your favorite things to do? And we can share some of that tomorrow.
Mary Jo, one thing else that we're going to be doing is sharing a kind of ideas of
Yes.
different types of creation vacation, the different places you go. And I believe Canyon Ministries there, Nate, is on that list too. So
Yes, it
Oh,
is.
fantastic.
On the list.
Yeah.
okay, that's just
Yeah.
one of the many places that somebody can go. And boy, if you go to Niagara Falls, guess what? We can give you ideas there too, although we've never been there, but we have studied it.
So we will be
Really
giving
awesome.
tomorrow. We can give you that that document that we put together. It's just a page and a half and mostly brainstorming at this point, but it's something we'd like to continue just adding to, because people sometimes need a vacation right close to where they live and they
Yeah.
don't even know what's there. You know, it's like Oscar was saying, sometimes you don't know what's in your own backyard, right? You don't know what's in your own area. We had a landlady up in Montana when we lived up there. Dave worked for the Bureau of Land Management for two summers up there. And halfway through the first summer, the landlady said to us, "You guys have seen more of this country than I have in my 75 years of living here." Because every weekend we would be out going someplace with our Jeep or backpacking and hiking and whatever. And so thinking about things that are close in your area is very, very important also. So we'll be doing some of that tomorrow. If you want to visit our website, most of you know it's discovercreation.org. And we do have trips coming up. We'll be talking more about those later, but
I wanted to share this one. We have one. We're still doing the family camp at Twin Peaks for those who are interested. But Oscar, I want you to pay a special attention to this one
Oh,
because
Oh.
I want you to start looking to find out if those dates are going to work.
You should put some
Oh,
question
that
marks
is-
there then.
Oh
that
yeah, I
is a
should
very
still
good
put a
thing that
question
I'm
mark.
getting
but-
date.
Huh?
I've got an potential breakdown of time, so we'll get that to you, Oscar, to see if that works for you and for Scott Leishman.
Great, great. I'm real glad that now you're considering dates so much earlier than years before. That'll make things much easier to work with. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
good.
hope we don't get COVID
It's
this
a good
time
news.
and may
Really
have to
good
make
news.
you do it.
No more COVID. You
Yeah.
have to come back, Charlie and Arlene, if you want to go with us.
We
Maybe
had
we'll
such
put,
a We had
may
such a
put some
good
new
time
flags.
we can blame Oscar for us gaining about 5 pounds because he made sure
Oh.
we ate very good every night.
Oh, that's
Yes.
good.
That's true.
Okay.
That really is true. We say creation vacations are fun, facts, friends, fellowship, and food.
Yeah,
Food.
lots of food. Yeah.
All of them have plenty of food.
Yeah.
All
Exercise.
righty. Well, send us feedback if you have it. We'll look forward to seeing you. Hopefully, all of you can come back on tomorrow, and we will continue.
All right. Good to see
Fantastic.
you, Oscar.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
I have
All
a
right.
question.
Good to
God
see you.
bless you.
everyone.
All
I have a
righty.
question.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, okay. Go ahead there, Joe.
You mentioned sharing the link. Are you talking about the email,
Yeah.
the link in the email?
For the Zoom, yeah, the Zoom link.
Zoom link. Okay. Do you have a because I thought about sharing it on like Facebook, and because I got people I'm sure would be interested.
That'd be great.
Do you have like a Facebook post that you posted the information that we can just share?
I
Well,
think we can get it put up between now and an hour from now, or maybe
Okay.
later this afternoon.
Like
We'll
with the
work on
graphic
it.
and things, I think
We would
people
love to have you share it out. That would be wonderful.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think this would be a good resource for families.
Oh, it is. I encouraged it that way. And how did you find out about this, Joe?
I got the email.
From and you normally get our prayer updates?
I do. Yeah, I'm
Okay, so
subscribed
that's
to-
where you got it. So okay.
Now, that would be great. Part of the reason we're wanting to do these online things is to reach out beyond our current mailing list. So we
Right.
will love it if people will share it out, and
Mhm.
it'll help to hopefully fill our camps, and also for Nate, and others that are doing creation vacations, and we can work together on some things maybe that way. So we'd
Yeah.
love that, Joe.
So I know there's a lot of eyeballs on Facebook these days, so
Yeah.
I thought it'd be easier. For me, it's easier than forwarding an email because I don't have everybody's email address. But if I
Okay.
can share it online on Facebook, that'd be
Okay.
Wonderful.
We'll make sure you get it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Sounds good. We're still working on technology. We're learning. We're learning.
Me too.
Sometimes I feel like, we're too old to learn all this tech. But then I'm going, well, old dogs can learn new tricks.
We're going to also start a number of these Zoom casts. Specifically, I'm not sure. We may call it something different, but let's call it a creation versus evolution fire hose experience,
Yeah.
which
Ooh.
means they're going to just get the information packed for parts of 3 mornings. Okay. And just get biology. You're going to get some of the geology and fossils, that sort of thing is going to go out. So you may know of people that you may want to hear some of this evidence that's out there. We'll do
Yeah.
a design lecture, but we'll make sure it's packed. Call a
And this-
fire hose. That means, Joe, open up your mouth and and there comes a fire hose of information. Can you hold it?
This, we plan to, with feedback from you all and from us, we hope to, upgrade this a bit, this experience, and do it again in early July. So that there may be some other people by then that you think of too that might want to get in on it. And we will probably be posting the replays up on our website. But that may take us a little bit. We haven't got it figured out yet how to put it into, we could put it into a Facebook post if we want to. We may do that.
Yeah.
We'll let you know.
Okay.
And you have a Yellowstone trip coming up, right?
We have Yellowstone coming up starting on the 18th of June. So we have places left in there. We would love it if you talk it up with some people and send them our way.